From DailyDoseOfWeirdNews.com, I'm Darren Marlar, and this is your Daily Dose of Weird News, brought to you by Send Out Cards. You don't have to leave the house, you don't have to buy stamps, and you still get a physical card in the mail with whatever message you wish to send. Choose from the hundreds of existing cards or create your own, complete with your own pictures if you wish. Try it now absolutely free by visiting sendoutcards.com/weird. That's sendoutcards.com/weird. Researchers say guppies are able to reproduce after they die. Big deal. Tupac has released 17 CDs since he died. Bill Gates met with President Trump at the White House Thursday. While there, Bill was also kind enough to update the president's Windows Vista system. A recent study shows 1 in 4 high school students drink soda every day, a sign fewer teens are downing the sugary drinks. And when other sugary drinks like Gatorade are also counted, the figure is closer to 2/3 of high school students drinking a sweetened beverage every day. The remaining 1/3 of teens who don't drink sweetened beverages each day typically can't do so because they are dweebs and have been stuffed inside a locker. Perez Hilton confirmed that Anderson Cooper has split from his longtime partner Ben Maisani. Just the opening Kathy Griffin has been praying for! White House staffers reportedly have a death pool going on who will be the next to go. And this week's surprise winner, Mrs. Donald Trump Jr.! In Salisbury, Maryland, 29-year-old Justine Nicole Whitaker was just handed a 10-year prison sentence for her involvement in the October death of her father, 50-year-old Nathaniel Whitaker. She'll only have to serve 3 of those years as the other 7 were suspended. After suffering cardiac arrest, emergency medical personnel unsuccessfully attempted life-saving efforts, and the state's attorney's office said Whitaker was pronounced dead at the scene, a hotel room Whitaker shared with his daughter. During an interview with detectives, Justine Whitaker admitted to injecting her father with heroin after he asked her to because he was too intoxicated to do it himself. A forensic pathologist who conducted the autopsy determined he died of a fentanyl overdose. So, here's a pro tip for you. If your dad is too drunk to inject his own heroin, just let him go without. A foot fetishist who caresses women's feet in the UK has struck again. His latest victim, a woman in her 30s who was getting into her car, said the man complimented her on her beautiful legs, then pulled her shoe off and tried to run his lips along her foot. She was finally able to close her car door and drive away. That is dangerous. She could have been a lead-foot driver, which could have given him lead poisoning. The reboots continue. Now CBS is going to bring back a new version of Cagney and Lacey. So yeah, Hollywood is officially completely out of ideas. You know, if they try to bring back the Beverly Hillbillies or Green Acres, I'm going to start wondering if I somehow died and ended up in the 7th circle of hell. The FDA plans to reduce the amount of nicotine that can be used in a cigarette. Man, the world is a dangerous place already, and yet you plan to make people even more cranky? A food pyramid just for the under 2 set? Well, contrary to popular belief, children don't usually outgrow their baby fat, and a recent report urges steps to help prevent babies, toddlers, and preschoolers from getting too pudgy too soon. That's a growing problem. Already 1 in 5 preschoolers, 2 to 5-year-olds, are overweight or obese. Topping the list of proposed changes, better guidelines to help parents and caregivers know just how much toddlers should eat as they move from baby food to bigger kid fare, and making sure preschoolers get at least 15 minutes of physical activity for every hour they spend in childcare. 15 minutes of physical activity for every hour they spend in childcare. Hey, can we move that up to the adult life too? How about if we work an 8-hour day, we get 2 hours of recess? Taco Bell has sold 53 million orders of its nacho fries. In totally unrelated news, the U.S. is reporting 53 million more heart attacks this year than any previous year. Matt Damon is moving his family to Australia, in part because he's fed up with President Trump. Well, that's what he says. Personally, I think he's trying to avoid the negative press he's been getting over being pals with Harvey Weinstein. HBO has hinted that the final season of Game of Thrones will include many, many deaths. So many that they've had to start killing them in the off-season. Sam Altman is a 32-year-old Silicon Valley billionaire and he is paid $10,000 to join a waiting list at Nectome, a startup that promises to preserve your brain so it can hopefully one day upload it into a computer to grant your consciousness eternal life. And the method, the company can assure you, is 100% fatal. Altman says he's confident minds will be digitized in his lifetime, adding, "I assume my brain will be uploaded to the cloud." 24 other people have also paid to join the waiting list. The company essentially proposes to embalm your brain while you are still alive with the intention of uploading it to a computer if or when technology permits, so that you can live digitally forever. Nectome's chemical solution can preserve a body for hundreds or potentially thousands of years, so one day scientists may scan your stored brain so it can be reborn as a computer simulation. But because the process requires fresh brains, the embalming chemicals need to be pumped into the client while they are still alive, effectively killing them. Nectome's co-founder Robert McIntyre, a computer scientist, said, "The user experience will be identical to physician-assisted suicide." Nectome's storage service is not for sale yet, and there is still no evidence that memories remain or can be extracted from dead tissue. Disturbing stuff. When it comes to stuffed animals, men are real softies. A new study found that 84% of men still have at least one stuffed animal. That's compared to 77% of women. Well, yeah, but we're talking teddy bears, which are bears. And bears are dangerous, so it's still manly. Shut up! They're saying the Northeast could start spring this week with yet another snowstorm. Yay! Global warming! James Corden challenged Oprah to make him cry on the air. She showed him her pay stub for the last week. Challenge over. Nearly 2,000 special menorahs given out during the Golden State Warriors Jewish Heritage Night last December have been recalled. According to press releases, the glue that holds the menorahs together can melt if exposed to heat. Man, you'd think if someone was crafting something that is meant to hold burning candles, they might consider heat to be a factor. But no. Reggie Jackson is set to have knee surgery after taking a fall. Although at his age, Mr. October will probably only come back to play t-ball. You're sitting in a freshly dry-walled house, drinking coffee from a plastic foam cup, talking on a cell phone. Which one of these is most likely to be the cancer risk? Well, it might be the sitting, especially if you do that a lot. Despite all the recent news about possible cancer risks from cell phones, coffee, styrene, and formaldehyde in building materials, most of us probably face little if any danger from these things with ordinary use, according to health experts. Inactivity and obesity may pose a greater cancer risk than chemicals for some people. So now this is an important lesson, folks. If you are going to be near drywall, drinking coffee in a styrofoam cup while talking on a cell phone, be sure to stand up while doing it. A study says 1 in 20 younger women suffer serious depression. And when you see what's out there for dating material, you'll understand why. They are experimenting with some rule changes in minor league baseball to try and keep the games moving, like a 15-second pitch clock when there are no runners on base. And when a game goes extra innings, each inning will start with a runner on second base. Wait, what? Each extra inning would start with a runner already on second base? Isn't that like giving somebody an A- when they only did the work for a B+? After 70 years in business, Toys R Us will shut or sell all of its 735 stores in the United States, which means millions of those Toys R Us kids will now have to grow up. Cheese consumption in the U.S. hit an all-time high last year and is expected to rise even higher this year. So maybe my next-door neighbor is not a crazy old coot like I think he is. Maybe he's just constipated. There is now a dating app that helps people find love based on what they hate, because that's a healthy thing to base a relationship on. Hey, wait a minute. What if what you hate is haters? The soon-to-be-out-of-business Toys R Us chain wants customers with gift cards to know that they currently have 30 days to use those cards before they become worthless. It's really sad, too. I mean, I saw that Toys R Us mascot in front of one of their locations with a sign reading, "We'll do giraffe stuff for food." A man who raped 2 women at knife point in Britain avoided capture for over 30 years. Then he peed on his neighbor's potted plant after an argument. The neighbor called police and 60-year-old Eric McKenna was arrested. He was only given a warning but also had to give a DNA sample. Turns out it was an exact match for samples recovered when a 21-year-old woman was raped by a man while walking alone in 1983, and an 18-year-old woman was raped in a similar situation 5 years later. The cases remained unsolved and unconnected until now. McKenna was arrested and charged with the rapes last year and sentenced to 23 years in prison on Friday. Detective Constable Mick Wilson said McKenna has failed to show a glimmer of remorse for his crimes. As for the neighbor whose plant got peed on, she said, "I felt physically sick when I found out what he had done. I'm so glad I reported him and these women have got justice." In Germany, one of their food banks banned migrants from getting anything so that they would be taking care of Germans first. I'm just surprised people are lining up to eat German food. That truly is desperate. Vladimir Putin has announced a mission to Mars in 2019 followed by a manned trip. In no time at all, we could see the very first poisoning on the Red Planet. A 5-story penthouse across the street from Trump Tower is in contract for $180 million, and if it sells, it will be New York City's most expensive condo sale ever. Okay, even if I could afford it, though, I still wouldn't do it. I mean, can you imagine the parking and traffic problems you would have living across the street from the president? Black cars blocking the street at all times, armed Secret Service agents blocking the entry to every doorway, paparazzi taking up all the parking spaces, Donald's hair taking up a parking space of its own. It'd be madness! According to a study published in the New York Post, people are no longer dieting as much as they had been in previous years. Hey, you know what? If having a butt as big as Kim Kardashian's is now considered sexy, I mean, why bother? There was talk on the internet about a big solar storm coming our way. Turns out it was a hoax. So, it turns out I bought that expensive solar umbrella for nothing. According to a study, about 3/4 of those asked use their bank password everywhere else a password is required. Now, if that's not stupid enough, these same people just admitted to a complete stranger that they do this. That's real secure there, Harold. According to a survey, you are safer from violent crime than you likely think. Although a couple of pollsters did get beaten up for asking too many questions. Arkansas high school student Wiley Greer says he was paddled for taking part in last week's gun control walkout. Greer says that only he and 2 other students walked out, and while they were sitting outside, the principal approached and asked if they knew there would be consequences for their actions. They said yes and returned to class. The 17-year-old Greenbrier High senior discovered he had a choice of discipline: 2 days of in-school suspension or 2 swats with a wooden paddle, and he chose the paddle. Is there some kind of space-time anomaly that's kept Arkansas from moving past the 1950s? A study shows 30% of mothers in this country can't afford to buy diapers. Researchers at Yale University surveyed pregnant and parenting women, and nearly a third said that they were in diaper need. Missing from this story the solution to the dilemma. I mean, what are mothers using instead of diapers? The story doesn't say. Do you just follow your baby around with a bucket and hope to be there in time? Vladimir Putin won his re-election, which comes as a surprise to no one who is still breathing after voting for him. An Oklahoma woman is going to prison for marrying her daughter. Looking into the situation further, it seems that a couple of years ago she also married her son. Well, yeah, I mean, you don't want to show favorites. Ever get behind one of those car transportation trailers and wonder what would happen if one fell off? Well, wonder no more. It happened in New Zealand, though the exact reason for what caused a car to fall remains unknown. The incident happened just before 10 a.m. on Friday and caused some delays and blockages to commuters. There were also several wrecked cars, including one upside down in the middle of the intersection. Amazingly, there were no serious injuries. Conductor James Levine is suing the Metropolitan Opera after they fired him for sexual misconduct allegations. In his defense, though, when it comes to music, you're kind of required to touch other people's instruments once in a while. How much money do you have to have before you are actually wealthy? Well, according to a survey of rich folks, when you have $5 million in the bank, you can live life with no constraints. Sounds good, but remember, over $250,000 a year means that you are in the top 1%, and some politicians and liberal pansies will routinely call you evil. A driver in England gave a fake driver's license to an officer at a traffic stop. The license featured Homer Simpson. The license had an image of Homer Simpson where the driver's photo would be and featured the name Homer Simpson at the top. So the cop arrested him for drunk driving and had him shipped immediately to the hospital for possible jaundice for that yellow skin. Oh! Quarterback Josh McCown signed his contract with the New York Jets while he was at a Chick-fil-A because priorities. With all the accusations about Russian activities, there's talk of boycotting the upcoming World Cup there. Personally, I think we should boycott the World Cup anyway. I mean, until they finally stop calling it football and start calling it soccer like it's supposed to be called. Britain has dropped a plan to scrap the penny for now. Makes sense. They're going to keep making sense. Food allergies affect about 1 in 13 U.S. children, double the latest government estimate according to a new study. The researchers say about 40% of them have severe reactions, a finding they hope will erase misconceptions that food allergies are just like hay fever and other seasonal allergies that are troublesome but not dangerous. Overall, 8% of the children studied had food allergies. Peanuts and milk were the most common sources. That translates to nearly 6 million U.S. children. However, some experts speculate that it may not actually be allergies, but just that these kids' moms have no business being in the kitchen. The National Coffee Association is very, very hyped about their latest study, which showed that 64% of Americans 18 or over had at least 1 cup of joe on the previous day. That's jacked up from last year when 62% said that they'd had some coffee the previous day. The mystery in this is how the remaining 30-some% were able to go a day without coffee, because I did not think that was physically possible. Pickle juice slushies are coming to Sonic. You have been warned. A couple in Afghanistan have named their son Donald Trump. On the upside, sometimes being bullied as a kid makes you tougher when you reach adulthood. A new study claims that a quarter of U.S. adults are online almost constantly. I read that this morning on my shower computer. Sex and the City actress Cynthia Nixon has officially jumped into the race for governor of New York. You know, with the last name of Nixon, the only way she has a shot is to get a puppy named Checkers and start every campaign speech with "I'm not a crook." Apparently, there is such a thing as a free lunch. Little Caesars Pizza said if a number 16 beat a number 1 seed in March Madness, it would be free lunch for everyone. Well, Monday, April 2nd, from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., you can stop by for your free lunch combo. To ensure you get to the counter in time for the free food, you might want to bring a cattle prod. Kevin Federline is asking Britney Spears to increase his child support of $20,000 a month to compensate him for the sacrifices he has made. Yes, it must be hard to sacrifice a non-existent music career. An Ohio man ate at Chipotle 500 days in a row, but now says he is ready for something new once he finally gets out of the hospital. One of the weirder trends these days, having diamond studs embedded into your ring finger instead of wearing an actual wedding ring. Good news, you never have to worry about losing your wedding ring. Bad news, if you're ever mugged and have to hand over all your jewelry, you have to cut your finger off. Research published in the journal Sleep reveals that tweens and teens are doing a lot more texting and talking than their parents might realize. In fact, 62% of kids surveyed admitted to using cell phones even after they'd gone to bed for the night. So text them a bedtime story. Scientists say Jupiter's red spot is shrinking and changing color. We don't know why, but we do know it's not from scratching it. Uber has suspended testing autonomous cars nationwide after an Uber self-driving car hit and killed a woman in Tempe, Arizona Sunday night. Even worse, they charged it to her credit card. Kathy Griffin's comeback begins. Her June 26th show at Carnegie Hall sold out in 20 minutes. They've already done a beheaded count. In Evansville, Indiana, 19-year-old Derek Faria decided to rob a Fifth Third Bank branch and, since he had no wheels, decided to take a cab to and from the robbery. Faria reportedly ordered a taxicab at home before taking it to the bank, where Evansville police said he gave the bank teller a note that read, "This is a robbery, give me all your money." Faria reportedly did not have a weapon. He then allegedly took the cab back home and paid the driver $20 from the money he stole. Authorities recovered all the money stolen during the robbery except the $14 cab fare and $6 tip. Faria is being charged with robbery and with possession of drug paraphernalia, which officers found in his home. And it's no wonder this guy was unemployed and had to rob a bank. But thinking like this, there's no way he was going to move up to management. A new biopic is being filmed in London with Renee Zellweger starring in the Judy Garland story. It's called There's No Place Like Sweet Home Alabama. The day of the week with the most workplace murders is Monday, which came as a surprise to absolutely no one. Eddie Redmayne and his wife Hannah have welcomed a baby boy into the world, their second. His name, Luke Richard Bagshaw Redmayne. Man, good thing this kid has two middle names to choose from. There is no way you're going to admit that you have a middle name of Bagshaw. A 9-year-old boy fatally shot his 13-year-old sister in Mississippi after she refused to hand over a video game controller. The victim, Jonay White, was shot in the back of the head and the bullet entered her brain. Monroe County Sheriff Cecil Cantrell said that he'd never seen a case like this one and confirmed the girl died from her injuries after being rushed to Le Bonheur Children's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. It remains unclear how the firearm used in the shooting had been accessed. The children's mother was in another room feeding other children lunch at the time of the incident. The circumstances of the shooting are still being investigated, and what consequences the boy will face is not known at this time. Yeah, I'm thinking sitting in the corner for a timeout ain't gonna cut it this time. When O.J. Simpson gave his first interview after being released from prison, he said that Colin Kaepernick made a mistake protesting the national anthem. And if anybody knows how not to learn from their mistakes, it's O.J. Simpson. In Nebraska, they're looking at raising the speed limit to 80 miles per hour. It's an attempt to get people who own Toyota Priuses to move to another state. Blame the potato chip. It's the biggest demon behind that pound-a-year weight creep that plagues many of us, a major diet study found. Bigger than soda, candy, and ice cream, and the reason is partly that old advertising cliché, no one can eat just one. They're very tasty, and they have a very good texture. People generally don't take one or two chips, they have a whole bag, said obesity expert Dr. F. Xavier Paisunier at the St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital Center in New York. Even more evil than potato chips? French fries. What we eat and how much of it we consume has far more impact than exercise and most other habits do on long-term weight gain, according to the study by Harvard University scientists. So, when eating your triple cheeseburger and chocolate shake, just give up the fries, and it's like being on Jenny Craig. Police in Hobart, Indiana found what they believe was a methamphetamine lab inside a White Castle restaurant, which completely explains the addictive nature of White Castle. Steven Spielberg says Indiana Jones 5 filming will begin in the UK in April 2019. Set for a July 2020 release date, the film will again have Spielberg teaming up with Harrison Ford. The film is tentatively titled Indiana Jones and the Search for a Geriatric Wheelchair. A woman stopped from taking her open jug of sweet wine on a train in China did the only sensible thing, chugged as much as she could before getting onto the train. This woman drank half the jug, about a quarter and a half. I'll bet that was a really fun train ride, though. In Springville, Utah, a bizarre fundraiser is being planned to benefit a local woman who had both arms and legs amputated. Tiffany King had a condition that required her to take a medication which weakened her immune system. In January, she developed pneumonia, which led to a blood infection, forcing doctors to give her another medicine that took the blood flow away from her arms and legs. The medicine saved her life, but the lack of blood flow to her arms and legs for several days forced doctors to perform a quadruple amputation. So in a Facebook post Saturday, some of her friends announced the event called Phoenix Wing Productions Welcomes Harry Potter to Burlesque. All the proceeds will go toward buying prosthetic limbs for King. But exactly how do you make Harry Potter burlesque? And would you really want to? A Baltimore coffee shop that has recently been robbed several times now no longer takes cash. Stop drinking coffee, people! It's just taking us one step closer to the mark of the beast! People unwilling to quit smoking to improve their own health might consider giving up cigarettes to spare their pets the harmful effects of secondhand smoke. A new survey says 28% of pet owners who smoke say they would try to quit based on knowledge that secondhand smoke could harm their dogs, cats, and other pets. Another 11% say they would think about quitting. Yeah, I don't really care if my smoke kills me or my family, but if little Fifi might get sicky poo. Ever wonder how monks make it through those vows of poverty, celibacy, and silence? Well, maybe it's meth. A Buddhist monk in Burma was recently arrested after police allegedly found 400,000 meth pills in his car, and then another 4.2 million more pills during a search of his monastery. So the secret to world peace is free meth? President Trump congratulated Russian President Vladimir Putin on his re-election despite getting warnings from multiple national security advisors and briefing materials that reportedly said in capital letters, "Do not congratulate." Of course, we all know the best way to make a kid want to do something is to tell them they can't do it. The world's last remaining male northern white rhino has died in Kenya at the age of 45. So much for white privilege. Sex and the City star Cynthia Nixon is apparently serious about it. She has announced that she's running for governor of New York. If elected, her first order of business is to make it a law that you can't wear white after Labor Day. A study finds that television may actually do no harm to babies. Research has determined that viewing TV before age 2 has no impact on a child's learning ability. God bless you, oh electronic babysitter! HUD Secretary Ben Carson says the reason he got expensive new furniture for his office was because the old stuff was dangerous, and he blamed his wife for the purchase of a $31,000 dining set. Hey, wait, way to throw Mrs. Carson under the bus there, Doc. Well, you know what? She is a doctor's wife, though, so I'm guessing she's used to blowing big bucks on stuff you could get for under $1,000 at Sofas R Us. More than 50% of U.S. broadband households surveyed would be willing to pay $5 per month for a smart thermostat service. It's going to have to be a genius thermostat service if it's going to figure out the right temperature of my house when I'm always hot and my wife is always freezing. Yeah, good luck with that, Mr. Thermostat. Melissa Joan Hart is heading back to TV for a Clarissa Explains It All reboot. Good. Maybe Clarissa can explain why Hollywood can't come up with any original TV show ideas. Someone caught a photo of Ben Affleck's giant back tattoo. It's been rumored, well now we know there is a giant phoenix back there taking up most of his back. Hold on here. Phoenix, that's the Marvel Universe. Batman is DC. Ben Affleck is a traitor! The FDA plans to limit using flavors in tobacco. Excuse me, this is a no-smoking section even if you do smell deliciously like nachos. A 15-year-old boy in Argentina pretended he had been kidnapped because he didn't want his dad to know he had failed an exam. He made up a story about being taken away by two men and how he escaped by jumping out of a moving car, but he actually took a bus, traveled around town, and showed up again a few days later without a scratch. So he failed yet again. Disney CEO Bob Iger could make up to $423 million over the next 4 years. And not only that, but he doesn't have to stand in line. A Colorado school district is trying out a 4-day school week. Big whoop. You know, I'm not going to be impressed until this is adopted by my employer. France says it's getting tougher on hate speech. What a bunch of poop heads. This may come as no surprise to residents of New York City and other big urban centers. Living there can be bad for your mental health. Now researchers have found a possible reason why. Imaging scans show that in city dwellers or people who grew up in urban areas, certain areas of the brain react more vigorously to stress. That may help explain how city life can boost the risks of schizophrenia and other mental disorders, according to researchers. Previous research has found that growing up in a big city raises the risk of schizophrenia, and there is some evidence that city dwellers are at heightened risk for mood and anxiety disorders, although the evidence is mixed. In any case, the volunteers scanned in the new study were healthy, and experts said that while the city-rural difference in brain activity was intriguing, the results fall short of establishing a firm tie to mental illness. You know what? I have spent quite a bit of time in downtown Chicago, and I totally agree. There is something mentally wrong with those people. A photo of Jesse James bought on eBay for $10 could be worth as much as $2 million, meaning he's still committing highway robbery. Martina Navratilova is making it known that John McEnroe was paid 10 times what she made as announcers at Wimbledon. But she's not bitter at all. 20% of people in the U.S. have a smart speaker of some type – Alexa, Google, Home, etc. The rest of us are married and have a wife constantly giving us her verbal opinion anyway. Toddlers who have a depressed mom are more likely than other kids to develop behavior problems as they get older, but a recent report finds that the risk of behavior issues, such as being overly aggressive, hyperactive, or withdrawn, can be reduced if toddlers spend just a few hours a day in formal daycare. Overall, children raised by mothers who reported current bouts of depression were almost 4 times as likely to exhibit behavior problems, including depression, anxiety, withdrawn behavior, and aggression. But half a day in daycare significantly reduced the risk of these behavior problems developing by age 5. I used to work in daycare, and I gotta tell you that I find it very surprising that your kid would actually be better off for a few hours with me than, well, anywhere else on the planet. As I'm sure you're already aware, spring officially began on Tuesday. In the Northeast, that's when the snow gets warmer. A team funded by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen discovered the wreckage of the USS Juno that was torpedoed by the Japanese and sunk with more than 600 aboard, including 5 brothers during World War II. So Microsoft gurus can find a lost shipwreck, but they still can't fix the blue screen of death? McDonald's has pledged to slash its greenhouse gas emissions at its restaurant and office locations by 36% by the year 2030. I don't see how this is possible, though. I mean, I get gas every time I eat at McDonald's, doubly so when the McRib is out. Del Matheson was preparing to reach out to his fellow Iowa high school graduates for their 60th reunion and was surprised to find that the entire class of 1958 is still alive. It actually is a pretty big deal, as the odds that all 14 members of the Ringstead High School graduating class were still among the living are 170 million to 1. Now, to put that into perspective, the odds of being struck by lightning in the U.S. in any given year are about 1 in 700,000. And while Powerball lists the odds of winning its own jackpot as 1 in over 292 million, Matheson and company still feel that they have won something akin to the lottery. All of the class members are now between the ages of 77 and 79, and apparently they're joking now about who will die first. Former Beatle Ringo Starr was knighted this week and is now Sir Richard Starkey. Once a Beatle, always a Beatle. But as I always say, once a knight is enough. Sleeping on the job might not be a bad thing after all. The website Business Insider recently released an article that shows a workday nap is beneficial and possibly even necessary. They say studies have shown napping to improve cognitive function, creative thinking, and memory performance. What I'm saying here is that every afternoon around 1 p.m., I'm becoming a better worker. According to a survey, 1 in 12 people would rather break their arm than do their taxes. Whoa, wait a minute, breaking my arm? That's a valid option? Okay, I choose that. A woman in Spain died after undergoing a supposedly routine bee acupuncture treatment and then suffering an allergic reaction that put her in a coma. So purposely getting stung by dozens of bees is a bad thing. Gee, who knew? According to a study by the journal Human Nature, men and women are different when it comes to carrying their cell phones. Men tend to take their phones out of their jackets and briefcases and place them in the open for anyone to see, while women usually left theirs tucked away. The men also fiddled with their phones more often, especially when the ratio of males to females increased. The journal also discovered that a few cell phones you see being used aren't even real. Some phones are just playing the role of status symbol. I think these are the same people who had imaginary friends growing up. I mean, after all, who do you think they're talking to on those fake phones? A new poll finds that the work of being a new mom is equivalent of having 2.5 jobs. That's assuming you can get that husband of yours unglued from SportsCenter long enough to write you a check. Good luck with that. According to a government report, people who tend to the elderly, change diapers, and serve up food and drinks have the highest rates of depression among U.S. workers. So bartenders who change adult diapers of elderly people must be miserable. A Utah father is suing the Boy Scouts of America and the Utah National Parks Council after his son, who has Down syndrome, wasn't allowed to complete his Eagle project. Welcome to the new Boy Scouts, where you can be a girl and get in, but if you're a boy and you have a genetic disorder, you get pooped on. Women have a new reason to get help with their insomnia. Poor sleep might be damaging their marriages. After a bad night's sleep, women, but not men, tend to have more negative interactions with their spouses, according to a new study. Other research has shown that sleep disturbance and deprivation has profound effects on mood, irritability, and frustration tolerance, said the study's lead author, Wendy Troxel, an assistant professor of psychiatry and psychology at the University of Pittsburgh. And the person you're most likely to take it out on is not your boss or some random person, but your spouse. And women were the most likely to have negative responses. So it's bad enough, my wife hogs all the covers and half the bed, but if I wake her up to get her to move, then suddenly I'm the rotten jerk? After years of trying, researchers are celebrating a major step forward for the male birth control pill. A month-long clinical trial shows a once-daily male pill is safe and effective at suppressing the hormones needed for sperm production and has no negative effect on sex drive. Researchers presented their findings at the Endocrine Society's annual conference in Chicago. Those who took part in the clinical trials also saw mild weight gain and a slight drop in HDL, which is the good cholesterol levels. But very few subjects reported symptoms consistent with testosterone deficiency or excess, and liver and kidney function remained healthy, senior researcher Stephanie Page says in a release. These promising results are unprecedented in the development of a prototype male pill. Researchers will now focus on effects over longer periods. I don't think this is ever going to work, though. My wife has to remind me to change my shirt every day. There's no way I'm going to remember to take a birth control pill. If you're a woman who actually washes her bras after every wear, you're going to want to pay attention to this story. You are about to be liberated. The Good Housekeeping Institute has announced that women only need to be washing their bras after they've worn them several times. Oxford Dictionary defines several as more than 2 but not many. Because we all know how alluring sweat-smelling bras can be. So sexy. Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth plan to reunite for a Men in Black reboot. Okay, maybe it's just me, but I just do not see Tessa Thompson pulling off Tommy Lee Jones' Agent K. According to a survey, 2/3 of Americans interviewed could not name their congressional representatives. Gee, I don't know his or her name, but I really don't approve of the job that he or she is doing, that's for sure. Songs performed by Tony Bennett, Gloria Estefan, and the Sound of Music soundtrack are among 25 recordings being added to the National Recording Registry. Bennett's standard I Left My Heart in San Francisco is being added, along with Rhythm Is Gonna Get You by Estefan and the Miami Sound Machine. The soundtrack to The Sound of Music is also going in, and Run DMC's Raising Hell album. Run DMC? Why am I hearing one of these things doesn't belong here from Sesame Street? The new Samsung Galaxy S8 has Samsung's version of Siri called Bixby. Although, if it's the voice of Bill Bixby, you'll want to pass, though. You do not want to risk getting him angry. You wouldn't like him when he's angry. The big and final sale began yesterday at Toys R Us stores. All remaining Toys R Us locations in the U.S. are clearing their inventory with massive price cuts on basically everything in the stores, with most locations beginning their sales yesterday and running through June. I just thought you'd want to know. It's your last chance to relive those childhood memories before they're gone forever. A British man has died after a freak accident at a luxury movie theater. Authorities say the customer was at a View Cinema in Birmingham when his head became wedged under the electronic footrest of a reclining gold-class seat. Sources say the guy was trying to retrieve a phone that he dropped between seats and became trapped when the footrest shifted from the upright position. He panicked as the footrest clamped onto his head, and his partner and others struggled desperately to break it away and free him. The man suffered a cardiac arrest while trapped under the seat. Man, this cannot be real, can it? I mean, this sounds like something out of a Final Destination movie. Yikes. Lindsay Lohan is the new face of legal directory Lawyer.com. Because if anybody knows about needing a lawyer, it is Lindsay Lohan. In Lubbock, Texas, a guy stopped in at Chick-fil-A, bought food, and left, forgetting his $3 and change. Well, an employee brought it with him to work every day for a month before the guy finally came back in and the employee returned his money. No snarky comment for this one, no joke. It's just good to find out there's at least one person out there with integrity. Who causes more stress for you, your spouse or your boss? Research shows that spouses are a bigger source of stress than bosses. There may be no place like home, but if you want to relax, then you might be better off at work, according to the survey. The poll of 3,000 men and women also found that husbands are more likely to send their wives' blood pressure soaring than the other way around. Upon hearing the news, husbands all over the nation immediately volunteered to go fishing, for their wives' sake. A new study shows that grilling meat may raise the risk of high blood pressure. Well, it's not eating the meat, it's the cleaning of the grill, lighting the charcoal, fighting flies and mosquitoes. According to researchers at the University of Vienna, dogs, like kids, have a sense of what's fair. Says the lead researcher in the study, canines, like people and monkeys, seem to have a sense of fairness. Animals react to inequity, and to avoid stress, we should try to avoid treating them differently. Really? You want fair, Fido? All right, well, how about you take out the garbage for a change to show your appreciation for me picking up your yard poop? That sounds fair to me. They've struck a deal with the cast of The Big Bang Theory, so it will stick around for one more season and then wrap things up. Good thing. Another couple of years and we'd have had stories of Sheldon living in a nursing home. Jimmy Kimmel showed the results of his colonoscopy on his show Tuesday night. Gee, thank goodness for DVR. In Florida, a man suspected of stealing a car with a baby inside was bizarrely filmed handing the infant over to a gas station worker while shouting, "Take the baby! Take the baby!" Surveillance video shows the suspect pulling up to the Sunoco station in Royal Palm Beach around 4 a.m. Tuesday. He can be seen unstrapping the child from the back of the black Kia Rio, running towards the gas station to drop off the child, and then speeding off with the car. Police believe the car was stolen from another gas station 6 miles away while the baby's mother was outside the vehicle. The gas station worker immediately called 911 and the baby was reunited with his mother within 30 minutes. Officers found the abandoned Kia nearby but are still looking for the suspect, who now has serious kidnapping charges on top of everything else. But those Kia Rios, they're so smooth riding that the baby went right to sleep. Now that is comfort. John Oliver's joke children's book about Mike Pence's gay pet bunny is already selling out. Because of course it is. Dentists could soon hang up their drills. A new peptide embedded in a soft gel or a thin, flexible film and placed next to a cavity encourages cells inside teeth to regenerate in about a month, according to a new study in the journal ACS Nano. This technology is the first of its kind, and it would remove the need for drills. Dentists surveyed said that this would take all the fun out of being a dentist. New stats say the average American spends around $1,100 a year on coffee. It appears I am finally above average for a change. In Detroit, a grandmother was trying to unload an AK-47 assault rifle in her home. The gun accidentally discharged and the bullet went through the second-story floor and hit a 3-year-old girl on the first floor. Fortunately, it only grazed the girl's leg. Police say it also narrowly missed an 18-year-old who was in the basement. Warren Police Commissioner Bill Dwyer says there probably will be some charges forthcoming. Yeah, you got to be careful with those Detroit grandmas. If they're not shooting their mouths off, they're shooting something else off. Because of the current bread shortage in Venezuela, the government has taken over all of the country's bakeries. Government bread. Gee, that's going to be some tasty stuff. Become a patron of the show and get exclusive content just for official weirdos. Get the details at dailydoseofweirdnews.com. And if you like scary true stories, check out my other podcast at WeirdDarkness.com. For Daily Dose of Weird News, I'm Darren Marlar, and I'll see you next time, Weirdos!